Whether we want to admit it or not, the sports card hobby and the overall interest in sports cards and collectibles is at all-time highs. Let's talk about it. Stick around. What's going on, sports card hobby family? How are we doing? I got a little bit too much sun doing the neighborhood pool thing over the weekend. Got carried away, was throwing the football with my sons. 4 hours later, I got a little lobstery. But we fight on. We fight on. A little aloe. We'll take care of that. And frankly, I needed to get a little bit of sun anyway. Before we dive in, huge thanks to today's video sponsor, COMC.com. Monstrous 25% off your next submission running from May 31st, so now through June 17th. You can take advantage of 25% off all submission service levels. We're talking about Elite, we're talking about Select, we're talking about Standard. Every single level, 25% off if you are going to send cards in to COMC. Ton of buy sell going on that platform, 35 plus million cards, so make sure to check out my links down below to get it going with COMC. All right, there's a lot of competing narratives, competing talk out there when it comes to interest and who's involved and who's still in and who's getting out. Let's actually start from the content side, because you would hear a lot about, like, man, there's a lot of content creators that just aren't making any sort of sports card collectibles content anymore. And that is true. There are people that have left for sure. But man, I think it's actually the most competitive that it's ever been on YouTube. I can't speak for IG or Twitter or some of the other platforms, but on YouTube, for every one, I would guess, for every one person that is left that's not making content, I feel like over the last year, 18 months, there's 2 or 3 that have replaced that person that no longer makes any sports card content. It is highly competitive for eyeballs these days, which is great because it shows there is a ton of interest. There's a lot of people that like this so much, they want to talk about it with somebody. They want to talk about it, try to build an audience that they can talk to about their sports card journey, what they're doing, collecting / speculating, all the stuff, news, etc. Card shows haven't slowed down. It's going to be interesting. The National this year being in Cleveland, it's in a different venue, of course, than really probably the best venue, and that's in Chicago and Rosemont, where you just have everything right there nearby, whether it be hotels and restaurants. It's just a great space for the National, probably everyone's favorite space. This year, of course, switching it up a little bit in Cleveland. I don't believe it's as high of a square footage as what they have in Chicago, but I'm more curious to see logistically if it's going to be as busy, because it's just not as easy to get to the venue. It's a 15-20 minute drive from downtown, 15-20 minute drive really from anywhere. You don't have great food options nearby. It's kind of like out in the middle of nowhere, convention center type thing, to where you actually have to move out of there. I think they're going to have food trucks. I have to assume they're going to take advantage of the amount of people that are there. There's going to have to be food trucks or some sort of food options that they will make happen there. If you're a food truck owner out there in that area, that's got to be just a dream for you coming up, because there's going to be a lot of people that are starving that are going to need your services. But all in all, card shows still really slammed. There might be smaller ones, maybe some regional ones that are taking a hit here and there, just depending on your location. But I mean, for the most part, when you look at a lot of the big time shows, they have not slowed down at all. There's still all-time highs being paid if we're talking about on the very high end. Look at the latest Michael Jordan sale that just sold at Golden. I think that they said it's the most expensive Michael Jordan card ever, sold for like $2.9 million, a monster card, monster price tag. On the high end, you're still seeing money spent. A lot of the commodity type stuff that's really easy to get, that's just in a high grade, that stuff has taken a hit over the last few years for good reason. But a card like this that is just very rare, that doesn't sell for a couple years, few years, maybe 5-10 years, those sorts of cards, when they hit auction, there is big money waiting for those cards, ready to spend. So on the high end, you're still seeing a lot of money being spent. If we go back in time to the last boom, people will say, no, I think the junk wax era was actually, that was actually a time where there was more people, there was more interest in this space. And I would argue that it's now, that it's even more so than it was back then, just because of the different layers that we have now to be able to buy, sell, trade. Also, there was not a sniff of institutional money in 1990 that was interested in this sort of things, in sports cards and collectibles. And there wasn't really the cards to meet that demand of institutional money. What I mean is it was more about stacking volume back in 1990. It was all about stacking Mark McGwire rookie cards and getting as many Todd Van Poppel rookie cards as you could get, Bo Jackson rookie cards. There wasn't a one of one. There wasn't an autograph version. There wasn't all the variations and parallels. People will say, man, it sucks that we have so many parallels nowadays. And I get it. Maybe it's gone like too far the other way. I understand. I think it has gone too far the other way, but it's good to have some of that stuff. Have a golden ticket in there. It's fun. It makes that stuff fun. It's really what makes that Art to Bart card that I have, that 93 Simpson Skybox card. There's so much interest on that card because that was kind of an outlier back then. There wasn't a redemption card to then send it in and get an art card made for you. That was pretty, creative back then in 1993. There just wasn't a lot of that sort of thing going on, and especially not with culture cards, entertainment cards. So that's why that card is as special as it is. On the same token, on the low end and the mid end, you still have people putting a lot of disposable income into the low end and the mid end, either to collect their favorite players or to complete sets or kind of play around buying the rainbow and trying to complete the rainbow type thing. And then, of course, we've talked about it. You have repackers that are in that $50 to $500 range that are really propping that stuff up as well. But, for better or worse, it is keeping interest. I always talk like I'm not really into the gambling products as much of the hobby, whether that's breaking / repack / Razzes or whatever the hell. I'm not into the gambling products really that are offered, but they serve a purpose. There's interest. It brings people in. If there was no demand for it, people wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't be as expensive as they are. It wouldn't all be happening. So there is demand for those products. So that's it. Doesn't matter what I think or what anyone else thinks. That's just the reality. That's what our hobby is. And again, in 1990, there wasn't that element. There wasn't box breaks. There wasn't any sort of duck races and whatever the hell you've got going on nowadays. For better or worse, that's another layer to the hobby that just wasn't there going back in time. Card shops. Card shops, of course, they were plentiful, and there was volume of card shops if we go back to 1990. Tons of them opened up, and then, of course, a lot of them closed down in 93, 94, 95. But it was, again, just about volume of shops. It wasn't necessarily about having the nicest shop. I mean, my God, some of these shops that are now, Cards HQ with Jeff Wilson, that would be an example of literally like a Toys R Us for cards. There was nothing like that in 1990, 1988, 1992, not even in the same stratosphere. The idea of someone putting millions of dollars into a card shop in 1990 would be insane. Nobody did it. Nobody did it. Card manufacturing. Now, this is kind of an interesting one because you look and, Topps Fanatics kind of taking over the world here, but we are in kind of a nice, as much as it sucks for certain products that you've kind of got the split between Wemby autos are in Topps Chrome, but it's not licensed, but Panini's got the license. I understand that that's not great for collectors in a sense. However, I do kind of like the fact that you've got, Topps products. You're going to have Topps Chrome, this, that, or whatever. You got Panini products. You also have smaller manufacturers that are really getting creative. Leaf, we talked about, Leaf is signing all sorts of different people, and they have popular products, of course. Onyx Authenticated, if you go and look up Vintage Onyx or Onyx Vintage Cards, they have a lot of on-card autographs, and they're limited in production for big-time players. There's Drake May on-card autos that you do not find in the Bowman products. Everyone's chasing after that Bowman first, of course, but a small company called Onyx has been able to lock in, some of these autographs. They're making nice cards with on-card autographs, and they're limited. We've also just joined up with them. They're going to be doing some promotional giveaways through the channel. We do have the new newsletter. That's the first one's going to drop on Friday, and Onyx is going to be one of the companies that's going to participate in different giveaways for subscribers of the newsletter. We will choose, I'm not sure if it's going to be weekly or bi-weekly, but we will have giveaways that are fairly consistent for the newsletter. So make sure that you do subscribe to the free newsletter. I've got 72 people that have signed up. My goal is to have 100 by the time that the first one drops on Friday, and we will announce $25 of free supplies, top loaders, and all that good stuff from Card Capsule. That will be announced on Friday. One of those newsletter subscribers will be chosen, and we will shoot you off $25 of free supplies. So don't forget to join the free newsletter in the links down below. Anyway, my point is that manufacturing, they're not necessarily coming out with any groundbreaking designs. Now, people go crazy over kabooms and downtowns and stuff, but I mean, I think a lot of us that have been around for a while, the 90s designs, the 90s inserts, the different kind of stuff they were doing back then, it even trumps what we've got going on today. So there could be better things coming out, on the manufacturing side, but I do still like the fact that you've got the wild cards, you've got the Onyx companies that are out there just doing their own thing. There's a little bit more of an acceptance now for unlicensed type stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to have the NFL or the NBA logo on it. People are still interested in these sorts of cards. And given the delay in getting out the NFL logos and the NBA logo cards, it does give you runway there to be able to collect some cool stuff for players before all that stuff comes out. Grading cards. Grading cards, we just talked about it yesterday, all-time highs for grading cards. It feels like every single month we're talking about how, PSA and SGC have graded all-time highs. And again, I'm surprised by this. I'm surprised there hasn't been at least a little bit of a lull. I think a part of this too, though, is PSA is capturing more of an international audience. SGC just continues to climb here domestically, but PSA setting up offices in Asia, I think, is huge. I think their global presence is going to bring in more and more volume for them. So they have the capacity to be able to handle, it seems, more and more cards coming in the door through PSA. So interesting times, guys. I mean, look, again, we talk about kind of a weird economy. It is a very weird economy. We don't know what's coming down the road. We don't know in the US, national debt, really globally, a lot of countries have some massive debts. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I think the one thing it's clear, people are finding solace, they're finding enjoyment in our sports card collectibles hobby. This is something to take your mind off of things. It is a fun release, however you're operating in this space. And there's a lot of really great athletes as well that are kind of fueling this, draft classes that are exciting. And I know that, some of these guys are overhyped and most of them won't work out and all that, but that's just the way that sports goes. That's the way that cards go too. It's always been like that going back 40, 50 years when people really started speculating on new players in the sports card hobby. So here we are, my friends. Better or worse, this is the most attention and the most interest that the sports card hobby has ever had. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.